Kevin, thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here, Jeff.
Kevin, Sony Music Entertainment is headquartered in New York City, the pandemic's hardest hit city in the US. How have you and Sony Music been affected by this pandemic environment?
Boy, that's a loaded question, being deep into the pandemic. But, first a little bit about Sony Music. Sony Music, we have more than 60 operations in the major cities around the world. So we're we got a global footprint. And the pandemic, obviously, the origin was China. We have an operation in Beijing. That operation shut down much earlier than we shut down in New York and some of the operations in Europe and the rest of the world. And then South Korea, we have an operation in Seoul that we shut down. So, we were in stages leading up to the shutdown in New York. New York, we shut operations down mid-March, and not shut down, we went working remotely. So there was a major transition, and most every territory after the US decision was made, we went into a remote working environment, which, quite frankly, a lot of companies, have done some remote working, particularly on the tech side. The music side, it was much more in-office type of working. So going to a remote working environment across 5,000 plus people around the world was interesting. But it was remarkable because I quickly learned that people could be productive, extremely productive in that remote working environment. And, it challenged our IT tech infrastructure, which the teams worked early on to make sure that we had the capacity to deal with the number of Teams meeting and video conferencings that took place, the number of VPN connections into the office. But right now we're averaging about 60,000 Teams meetings a week. So it's a tremendous amount of activity and production in the environment. So, from a working standpoint, there's obviously certain functions that are much better to be in the office face-to-face in a collaborative type of environment. But there's a lot of functions that don't need that face-to-face interaction. As long as you have the proper technology setups in the home, you can be effective in working. So, but, our business, we're in the music business. If it was, 10 years ago, where we were reliant on selling a physical piece of product in retail, and retail was shut down, our business would have been a lot different state. But we're fortunate enough that the business models have evolved, and we're in a streaming type of environment with more people working at home. The streaming consumption of music is, initially it dipped because you lost the commutation side of the music listening, and more people were engaged to the video content and the news cycles. So there was a little dip in music listening, but that's picked up to pre-pandemic levels. So, the impact on our business there's been impact in certain revenue streams, but not as profound as like if you're in the live side of the music business where there's no shows and no live performances. Those businesses have been really, really hurt. And the question is, when are those shows going to reactivate? And that's still an unknown. But it's been a challenging time, but it's been also a time of learning in terms of how we move forward. And the other thing about operating in many territories, our operations back in China, we're back. Our team, which we have about 80 people in the Beijing office, is back at work. So they've reactivated the workforce in the office. They're taking all the precautionary measures with respect to protective equipment, temperature checks, and things like that in South Korea. So we've got about 40% of our operating companies are in some capacity back in the office, and we're thinking about those plans. A place like New York, where our headquarters is, we have about 2,000 people in the New York office on 25 Madison. It's a completely different proposition because of the density and the commutation that takes place in getting people to an office environment. And if you've got to operate with social distancing protocols, this even we operate in open space for the most part, an open space type of office environment. It makes it a little bit more challenging. Then we're going through the planning for when it makes sense to start to bring folks back in New York. But there's a lot of learnings that are coming from this.
Kevin, can you talk a little bit more about the pieces of the business functionally? You made reference to some of the functions can really continue remotely, whereas others, it's a little bit harder. Typically, they would lend themselves more to face-to-face interaction. Can you just give some examples of the ones that would be most affected by the loss of that interpersonal interaction?
Yeah, sure, Jeff. Our business is creative. We sign in talent. We have talent that we work with, and that talent produces music in creative environments like studios, and they work with our people in studios. And when you have a shutdown like this, you don't have the access to those studios that you had pre-pandemic. So in terms of, creating new music, it's not, the amount of music being created slowed down for a period of time, but then, it has picked up because even the making of the music and the collaborations that are taking place, we've got equipment and artists, homes and facilities that allow the artists to continue to make their music in a real quality fashion, working with our artist and repertoire creative teams in the development of that music. So, there was a little bit of a learning process there. That piece of the business, obviously, it's better to be in a collaborative studio type of environment, but we're and some of those studios have opened up in different parts of the world. There's a reactivation there. Video shoots. We, in addition to creating the audio music, it's also the visual. And video shoots has been shut down, so we haven't been able to produce the music videos that accompany a single when we bring that single to market. So that's changed. The marketing side of the business, it's much more of a digital marketing focus. Working with social media platforms to create the awareness that new music is coming out, working with the artists to, just stay in touch with their fans and using social media platforms to do that. So, there's all those different functions, there's been some learnings and some adjustments that have been made. But again, I'm happy to say that, the flow of music is picking up, and we've got new music reaching the marketplace every day in all territories around the world. And then the other functions, what you might call the back office functions, the finance, the IT, legal and business affairs, those functions, quite frankly, in a post-COVID environment, we may have more people, staying, working at home. We're giving more flexibility and allowing our workforce, more people to work in a remote environment, maybe coming in for, a meeting 1 day a week or 2 days, every other week. But, we're developing those blueprints as we speak.